Hi, and welcome back to On Track Tips. My name is Jason Weiser, and you are listening to Get On Track, Stay On Track, helping your small business. A couple pretty smart folks at a time. We used to say one expert at a time, but I don't know. I didn't like it, so I changed it. It's been a long time since I have given the On Track Tips show. I took a long hiatus. There's been a lot of people that have been asking me, Jason, come on, bring the show back. But I have my reasons why I wasn't able to return to the show. And so today is not your typical on-track tips format, but it's very spontaneous. I was listening to one of my absolute favorite podcasts. It's my treadmill 30 minutes that goes on for about an hour sometimes. But it's the Web Search Social Podcast by Ralph and Carol Lynn Rivera. If you're not listening to Web Search Social Podcast, make it a part of your life, or it's possible that you will die prematurely. Maybe not. I don't know. So that's the Web Search Social Podcast. And I was listening to the episode 144. That's 12 squared. Episode 144 with Dino Dogan, and they were talking about entrepreneurship. And I sent a ping over to Ralph on Facebook and let him know the truth. Ralph, you suck. And he says, well, I'm here. And I said, great, well, let's get together and let's discuss why you suck. He sucks because he didn't invite me into that discussion about entrepreneurship, and it was a wonderful, wonderful discussion. So as soon as you're done listening to this discussion, head on over there, Web Search Social, episode 144, and find out what inspired this. But before I let Ralph and Carol Lynn have the mic, I want to introduce Mr. Mike Brooks. How are you, Mr. Mike Brooks?
Good. Thanks for bringing me in, Jason. I really appreciate it.
Now, I've heard a lot about you from Ralph because you have a podcast of your own, and that is?
The Nuclear Chowder Marketing Podcast.
And the elevator pitch is?
Basically, getting beyond the technical talk and just getting down to the marketing nuts and bolts.
Yeah, I haven't listened to it yet. I need to listen to it because I know that it is Ralph and Carolyn rave about it. Okay, I don't want to get bundled up on the intros and discussions, but Ralph, Carolyn, whichever one of you want to grab the mic for 42 seconds, have at it.
Take it away, Carolyn.
Well, first of all, I think that our podcast can double as health and fitness, because if it's inspiring you to get on the treadmill, then that's a win all around. We're fine with that. And second of all, the entrepreneurial journey never really ends, right? So just because you weren't on that episode doesn't mean we can't have another fabulous one with you on it.
Like a spontaneous one in the middle of the afternoon on a Saturday, right?
Although I do have to say that technically speaking, you are on every single one of our podcasts.
Oh,
yes, the Jason Weiser bot, right?
What? Are you kidding me?
Exactly.
Something like that. Okay. Hey, you know what? I don't know if anybody's even... Well, according to my little ticker here, nobody's listening to it right now, but somebody's going to be listening to it later. So we're still going to give you guys the best stuff. Anybody that decides to tune in, so we're going to skip past all of this and jump right into it. What I really liked about your discussion was this discussion you had with a pseudonym Amy. Right, Amy was this young gal that you were talking to about her business needing to make money, and I kid you not, just yesterday I had a woman call me and ask me to do some web design work for her or development work for her, and after we started talking a little bit, I need this done and this done and this done, and I asked her very simply, because I kind of had the sense that she didn't really understand her business, like exactly what her product and service was. Like she didn't actually have that defined. So I kind of said very directly, how do you plan on paying for this? You know, how are you going to pay for these services? Are you going to, is your products and services paying for this? Is the work that we're going to be doing going to be creating something that will generate the revenue that will pay for this? Or are you borrowing and stealing from Peter and Paul to take care of this? And come to find out that yes, in fact, no, I don't have any money, and in fact, I don't even really have a product or service right now. Well, we need to remedy that. Step one, before at the end of Web Search Social, they always say, what would your action item be? My action item immediately to her was, before you spend a lot of money on building a website or marketing or social media, define and develop a product or a service. If you're doing it for business, if it's a hobby, fine, go ahead, grab a hammer, hit a hit your piggy bank, have fun, make it a hobby. Okay, chime in, Mike or Ralph or.
Well, I'll chime in first because there is no lack of good ideas out in the world. There are lots and lots of good ideas. So what I would say is, and maybe I'm nitpicking here, that before you develop a product or a service, you have to first find out if there's an audience for that. I've heard a number of pitches for products that are like dating type apps. And that's a very, very tough niche to get into. So if you're going to develop some kind of a dating app, you better hope that there's somebody on the opposite end that's going to pay money for that, whether it's paying money on a subscription basis or paying money for advertising. Somehow that product has to be sustainable. It can't just be that you have a great idea and you want to birth this good idea into the world because, you know, as people with kids know, kids cost money. And if you're going to build a website or you're going to build an app or you're going to try to bring your next wonderful new idea into the world, it's going to cost you. You got to send that kid to school and to college, and it's expensive. So what I have been trying to, in my ongoing discussions with Amy, the person that Amy, not her real name, but the person that we were talking about on our podcast, is we have set up a second meeting because she's a colleague of mine. And I said, but you have to come prepared to tell me how these ideas make money, because if you can do that, then I can help you cultivate that. But if it's just an idea that you just want to try to get people to pay you money or invest or get VC funding for, you're never going to do that. I've been in the VC world by way of Triber for the past 2 or 3 years, but by way of one of our business partners with Carolyn, Mike, and myself for the past 25 years. And people who are smart don't invest in good ideas. People who are smart invest in solid businesses. And having a good idea just is not good enough. There's tons of good ideas out there. Which one of those can make money? That's where the discussion should start.
Yeah, you know, I'll add to that. I do some free coaching. I volunteer for SCORE. So if you're not familiar with SCORE, it's anybody can get free business advice going to score.org. There's SCORE local chapters all over the country. And the first question I want to know, you know, when we get together with somebody who's got this great idea is explain to me who your audience is, explain to me why they're going to buy your product, and then explain to me how you're going to make money. And usually that what I'm looking for is, can they explain it to me as succinctly as possible in a 60-second elevator pitch? If it goes on and it's rambling and broad and, well, we're going to do this, and if they're talking for more than like about 60 seconds without me getting it, I know they don't have that stuff fleshed out. They have to have a sales funnel. They have to have an idea of how much it's going to cost to produce this thing, how much it's going to cost to scale it, what they want to scale it to. Do you want it to be $1 million business, a $10 million business, a $100 million business? Do you want VCs to be interested in it? How are you going to monetize? How are you going to upsell? I mean, there's so many different things, and if they can't explain to me, and usually people will start off by saying, well, you know, we have this customer and this customer and that customer and everybody and anybody. And they use language that's very typical of, I have no idea how I'm going to make money with this. So I usually send them back to basics. Who's your customer? And not just who's your customer, but who's your number one, your A-level customer, that customer that is most likely to buy the best service that you have. They're going to be the highest paying customer. They're going to be the happiest customer. Not this everybody stuff. So always sending them, you know, back to basics.
Now, I'm going to push back a little bit on that, because from my own experience, it wasn't until these last 2 years that I started doing things like looking at buyer personas. It wasn't until these last 2 years that I started doing things like separating my personal from my business. Right here, I've been in web development and collecting funds and making transactions between customers and myself, collecting funds and producing a product for people that would be willing to pay for it for 12 years or so now. And in those earlier years, literally, I didn't know how to think in a business sense. And I didn't even, all I knew was I wanted to make a couple bucks. I knew how to install WordPress, and I knew other people didn't know how to install it, and I knew people needed that done. Right? I didn't understand price points or profits or profit margin and the difference between a net income and a loss lead. I didn't understand any of that stuff. I just jumped off the bridge, said, "Here's what I have to offer." Just did my absolute best job that I could. Developed a client base, and it took me 6 years or so before I realized that now here I am, and I've got all this. I've got this wonderful referral base of satisfied customers, and I look back in hindsight and I question myself, should I have, at first, before I started on this journey, should I have really gotten my LLC, my legalese? I love what Ralph, you and Carolyn do in talking about making sure that all of your paperwork and you can talk a little bit about that in a minute, but it's very important. I didn't have any of that stuff. I didn't have any protections for myself, for my clients, for my staff. I just jumped off the bridge. I didn't even know really what my product or service was. Let's just talk for a minute there, because I think that there's a huge group of people that really they don't know until they just jump in and say, I don't know if it's going to work or not. But what I want to address when I talk to these people is, okay, if you're not sure if it's going to work or not, at the very least, make sure that what you're doing is paying for itself. In other words, get paid to learn. Right? I think that was really important in my. I never invested money in unless I was earning some money to invest in. Who wants to jump in there?
Well, let me speak to that for a second, and then Ralph and Carolyn can jump in. I talked to tons and tons of business owners over the past decade plus who are just getting started, and they're jumping off the bridge. And 99% of them who jump off the bridge are going to splatter onto the rocks. There's a small percentage of people who will have accidental, on purpose success, and it's because even though they're not doing the steps they need to be doing, they're just going to make good decisions. They're going to get lucky to a certain extent, and you got lucky, right? You didn't do certain things with paperwork maybe, and you didn't get sued. If you got sued in those years when you didn't have LLC protection, you might be thinking differently about that, but you didn't. So it's easy to look back on that and say, no, I didn't need it. But for most people who start out, if they don't think it through, they don't have a plan, they're going to either have a very hard time or eventually they're going to hit a ceiling. And I mean, I can give lots and lots of examples of, and I don't want to talk about people in SCORE because that's confidential, but a big thing that came up in coaching session the other day without me mentioning what they do and who they are is this person had mentioned that his business has doubled and tripled and everything throughout the years, but then when he told us how much he makes, it sounds good when he starts talking about double, triple and all that, but when he tells us what he's making, it doesn't sound great. And then he's got all this free time and expansion room, but he doesn't understand how he's going to expand. He doesn't understand when he gets to this point, what's he going to do to expand his business. And if he doesn't do that stuff now, doesn't mean he's not going to be successful, but at some point he's going to have a hard time breaking past that ceiling that he sets for himself. He's going to be working 60, 70 hours a week to try and get all that work that he's brought in from being successful accidentally. But now he's not going to know how to grow past that point because he didn't have a plan. And now it's too late because now he doesn't have time to plan for it.
Ralph, Carol, jump off the bridge or be perfect before you start?
Well, I can't tell anybody to be perfect since we did a little bit of jumping ourselves. I mean, there's a lot of nooks and crannies to this conversation that are really interesting, so I might be a little scattered in my thinking. But first of all, I think that there is a difference between an internet-based business and like a traditional brick and mortar. I think that nobody would drive down the block, see an empty store, and go, my God, I'm going to open a deli right there, and just jump in. Typically, your cost of entry is a lot higher. You know, you probably somewhere in the back of your brain know that you should be looking to see if it's the right place, if there's people who are actually going to be coming in to buy your stuff and things like that. The internet, I think, has lowered the cost of entry so much that if you have the time and kind of that sweat equity to put into a business, if you have a computer, you can get up and go almost immediately. So there's that piece of it. And I think that when it comes to doing that kind of business, people do spend a lot less time thinking about the business aspect of it and more time just kind of jumping in. So there's that. The other thing is, I mean, when we started our business, we were initially freelancing for a little while, and when we then finally decided to make it official, we knew enough that we had to become an official business to incorporate the business. But we didn't. Nobody in college sits you down and goes, all right, if you're going to start a business, here are the 10 steps you need to take. You need insurance, you need this protection, you need that protection. About all that we knew at that point was, well, we need a business and we need a bank account, right? We need some checks that we can write, and we need a billing thing that we can collect invoices from. So back then, that was 16-ish years ago, it was a little bit of jumping. And, you learn as you go. And at some point you realize, oh, wow, I need insurance. Yeah, let's get that. And at some point you realize I also need some other thing, and so you get that. I mean, it's only now where we're actually starting our third business where we're saying to ourselves, all right, here's what has to happen. We need the shareholder agreement. We need the insurance. We need the bank accounts. We need. And you have all those things that you're kind of drawing on your experience from. I didn't magically osmose all that. I had no idea all that stuff existed until you kind of lived by trial, trial by fire, as they say. So it would be really nice if someone was sitting around just waiting to mentor me on that in the beginning, but that didn't happen. And like you, we had a computer and some skills and some clients, and we said, hey, we can help some people. And I think that, for you at least, and certainly in the beginning for us, some of our success relied on the fact that we knew we were giving people what they needed. We didn't just have an idea and then try to make some idea work. We said, oh, people need this stuff. Let's give that to them. And so, with that, you get some momentum, and then you learn as you go.
That's huge. I want to jump in. The woman that I was talking to just the other day, my Amy, if you will, she had said that I've created this product, and the product just happened to be a Facebook 101 type product. And of course, we all know that the market's pretty saturated with Facebook 101 products, right? And so I said, so you need a product or service. What is it going to be? And she says, well, I've created this, but I've really, I've only sold a couple copies of it, which really isn't surprising. No offense to her, it's probably, if it's really incredible or not, but you have to have a marketing engine behind it. You have a lot. So I like what you say right there, that you need to give the people what they want. In other words, if you got a great idea, that's one thing. I can go and I can invest a lot of money to create this thing that I think is going to be absolutely perfect, but I'm not my customer. Right? Who I have to figure out what it is that my customer wants, which is why we hear so many people say, if you're going to create a product, especially in the internet marketing community, if you're going to create a product, create it with the people that are buying it. Sell it first, and then create it alongside them. And I think that, like you say, and of course not in the brick and mortar environment, but it's certainly online, you have that luxury where you can test these things and say, look, are people buying this? What is it that people really want to have? Ralph, let's hear from you for a minute, and only a minute.
Well, I was going to throw in that one of the things that I think is relevant here is that when you're starting a business or any kind of venture, there are a lot of nuances that can take you in different directions. And when Carolyn and I were starting, and probably when you were starting, you started on your own, correct? Mm-hmm. And Carolyn and I, we were married, even though it was a partnership, we started together. It's way more complex, by quantum leap more complex to start a business with other people. Because when you have a business that you think you have a good idea about and you partner with someone, you're never really quite guaranteed that your ideas and their ideas are completely perfectly aligned. So in that case, the paperwork aspects, the insurance, the shareholder agreements, those sorts of things become a lot more relevant and make the whole process a little bit more complex. I think nowadays people tend to think that partnerships are very easy to make, which is true. They think that they're easy to maintain, which sometimes is not true, and they're easy to dissolve, which is very much not true. So it's not just a matter of, it's not a matter of following the formula for starting a company. It's a matter of what kind of company are you going to start, who are you going to start that company with, and give you a good example. You talked about the episode that we were on where I announced that I had stepped down as CTO of Triber. I'm still a partner at Triber. I'm still an equity owner. I'm just not working on a day-to-day basis as CTO. But Triber as a business and our business, Carolyn, myself, and Mike, they're two completely different types of business. That doesn't mean that they're bad, good, indifferent. It's just that they're different. Ours is based on running it in a kind of revenue-centric way to produce a product for a subscriber base so that we can maintain a business on an ongoing basis, and essentially making it self-sustaining. Whereas Triber, as Dino has talked about publicly many, many times, they're seeking VC funding, and also they're seeking potentially to have buyers come in, buy Triber, and essentially fund the next generation of Triber. The way that you run those two types of businesses are completely different. And again, when I say that, sometimes people say, well, which is the right way? It's not that there's a right way. It's just that different scenarios require different types of disciplines.
Yeah. Okay. So I want to, because I know the On-Track Tips audience, and I know that there are very few that are ready for VC funding. Okay. I want to bring this back a little bit. I want to bring this all the way back to what I believe our listeners really want to know. I'm sitting here and I'm bootstrapping this business. I've got some money in my pocket, or I'm just trying products out. I don't know which questions to ask. To Mike's point, before you get started, you need to ask this, you need to prepare for that. Many of our listeners, they don't even know what questions to ask. So, Mike, I want you to address that in just a second as you're thinking of your answer. I also want to address the topic of, my journey was very recently, when I started getting all my legalese and everything in order, I hired myself a financial consultant. I hired a lawyer. I hired a business coach, and I spent several $1,000s. Right? And in early days, that's inconceivable. I don't have several $1,000s to invest to do this thing right. So how does that person who doesn't have the money to invest to do it right, and then that daunting task, that thought of, are you kidding me? You want me to pay you $250 an hour to sit and talk on the phone with you? So he said to the financial consultant. Well, yes, because if you want this thing set up right, that's my rate. Right? Okay, well then I'm going to save some money and I'm going to go to YouTube and I'm going to try to find my answers, right? So I want one of you, Ralph or Carolyn, are going to talk to, I don't have the money right now. How do I invest? How can I get started if I'm bootstrapping or smacking my hammer against the piggy bank? But Mike, go ahead and answer my first question. How do I know which questions to even ask?
And let me make sure I understand the question. Which questions to ask to understand what product I should be selling or what I should be...
Yeah, you had said before you start your business, you need to think, okay, do I have a product that I can sell? Is this am I going to make profit from this? You had mentioned a couple things. I'm going to have to rewind the tape to see it, but just along those lines, you're starting out in business. You don't have a business mindset. None of this is all totally foreign and new to you. Where do you start? Dawn is in the audience and she's asking, what if you could give me one piece of advice? What would it be? So Speaking to that, hey Dawn, yeah, sorry to cut. Speaking to that, Mike, if you could give Dawn one piece of advice, not suggesting Dawn that you're at this place, I don't know where you are, frankly, in your entrepreneurial journey, but okay.
Right.
Mike?
So I'm going to go back to, I used to run a martial arts school. I'm going to go back to that and talk about what I would have done, knowing now, if I could go back in time instead of just jumping in and starting to run a school. I would go figure out where the successful schools were that I was running, and if I don't find any, that might be number one, that might be a clue that there's not a market for what I have. Ralph and Carolyn, I think, said before, you need to understand if you can sell the product, and if there's not a product out there already for what you have, that could be an indicator that there's not a market for it. So if you're going to invent a brand new thing, that's a little bit different. But let's say it's already out there. You're going to open a martial arts school. Well, I'm going to go find the most successful martial arts school within driving distance and see what they're doing and who their customers are and how much they're charging and how they're running their day, and really get an idea of how they're successful. If it's an online business, there's ways to do that as well, and I think sometimes it becomes easier to do that online. So it's really just putting on your detective cap. You're turning into a detective and really understanding what, success leaves clues, right? So, and that was after I had been at it and struggling for a long time. that's what I did. I went and sat inside the waiting room of the martial arts school that was the big guy in our competitive area, and watched in his parking lot and saw how things were going and got an idea of how he was marketing his business. When I started marketing it, I started just doing what he was doing. You know, and so I would say if I'm going to give you just one piece of advice is, you know, channel Sherlock Holmes and go see what's happening out in the world with what you want to do.
You know, there's a lot of people that have this this negative perception of the door-to-door salesman, right? I go on one door and I knock on it and I say, "Hi, I've got a product to sell," and then slams the door. And you go to the next one, knock on the door, "Hi, I've got a product to sell." You know, there's something to that, right? There's a reason that has lasted the test of time, right? Knocking on doors, getting out there, going to the pavement, doing your research. And I think that a lot of people building their business now, they're afraid to do that. They think that, oh, I'm gonna irritate. You have to be willing to. You know,
Yeah.
like back in college, you need to ask out 20 girls to get one date. You know, some cases, unless you're Ralph Rivera, you know, of course. But all right,
Well, that's the best. That's the best thing you can do is go. You know, once you've established what it is you're doing and you've got a plan, go sell it. That's like number one. Forget about trying to forget about the marketing you're trying to do and figure out how to sell it. What the process is, the simple process of being face-to-face with a person or virtual or whatever it is, and getting them to sign on the dotted line, getting them to buy your product. Once you understand that process and your conversions are high, where every time it's optimized, every time I meet with 3 people I get 1 client, well, now you can start to expand your marketing and get new people into the funnel a lot easier. So go sell it. Go see if somebody's going to buy it. That's super important.
Ralph, what if I don't have any money to start my business, but I know that I need to invest a little bit to get started? What should I do?
Well, obviously it depends on the type of business. If you have $0 and you want to open up a corner pizza shop, well, then you need to come up with the money somewhere. But if you're doing a venture that is, let's say, internet-based, there's a lot of ways to offset the money that you need. Partnering is one good way. The business that we just started with Carolyn, Mike, and myself, we have 2 other partners. Michael Camposano, he's our creative director. Now we don't have to hire someone to make us a logo and manage all of our creative and our visual branding. We've also hired Matthew Sampson. Well, not hired, but he's a partner. He's a forensic accountant. He is basically a VC accountant. He's spent the past, according to him, 700 years buying and selling companies. He knows how companies operate. He knows how to manage finances. He knows how to make businesses attractive to other businesses and businesses attractive to customers from a financial standpoint. Now I don't need to hire an accountant. I don't need to hire a designer. Michael is on board, so I don't need to hire someone that's handsome and delicious. And the list goes on and on and on. So I've offset us together. We've offset a tremendous amount of cost simply by partnering with the right people.
Yeah, and I'll just echo what Mike said, which is research. I mean, especially on the internet, you're bound to have built at least one relationship with somebody. You can't be on the internet and be in an isolated little space. So just reach out to people. And there are some things that you're going to have to spend money on. You're never going to be able to incorporate your business unless you cough up the money it costs to get that incorporation. Mm-hmm. So do that. You can't get insurance unless you can pay for the insurance. But when it comes to actually knowing what to spend money on, I mean, if you reach out to people for advice and I don't know that I'd say just do a random Google search, but reach out to your network of people, people you can trust, and find out whatever they know, learn from them. And you're never going to know it all right out of the gate. No one ever does, unless you're really lucky. But learn as you go, and always be reaching out to people and asking them, what they're doing and what's working and what's not, and learn from other people's mistakes.
Also, if you're running a business and that business has 10 components, we'll just speak abstractly. You should sit down and consider how many of those components you actually need in order to launch that product or service to start getting money in the door. Yes. Because too many people often focus on building the absolute positive, best, perfect product. You don't need that to start generating money. As soon as you start getting money in, all of a sudden getting the insurance, getting the attorney, all of that becomes much easier because you have money coming in as opposed to just money going out. These companies that they spend 6 months to a year building their product, that's just 6 months to 12 months that you're just losing money, or worse, not making any revenue. So figure out what your minimum viable product is and start selling that as quickly as possible, and then iterate from there.
You asked on. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. Can I add to that as well?
Yes, sir.
You know, if you don't have any money to invest in your marketing, you don't have any money to invest in building your business, get out there and start meeting people. Join some local groups and meetups and networking groups, and just start getting in front of it. Even before you know, it's a good thing to do before you start your business, is go into the communities, online and local, you know, depending on your business, and start getting to know people, so that when you do bring yourself to market, you've got a network, and that can be very, very powerful to get clients at a very inexpensive way.
You know, I'm even going to maybe be a little bit blunt on that, but if you don't have any money to invest to start a business, maybe you're not really cut out for an entrepreneurship.
Yeah, well, that's exactly that is an excellent point.
You know, you've got to be willing to, first of all, if I don't have any money, then that tells me a couple things. Either I haven't saved properly and I really should go back to my 9-to-5 and learn how to save some money, because look, any entrepreneur or business owner knows that you need to know how to be good with finances. And if you're not good with finances from your 9-to-5, you're not going to be good with finances in your entrepreneurship. Second of all, let's say I do have some money, right? And or if I don't have any money, then why don't I have any money? Because I don't know how to sell anything? Well, if you don't know how to sell anything, well, you probably shouldn't be an entrepreneur, right? If you don't know how to network, if you don't know how to sell, if you don't know how to create product or service or present or whatever it is, and I'm speaking more from an internet-based business because of the OnTrack Tips audience, but I want to go and wrap this up because I'm a 30-minute treadmill kind of guy, and I've always kept the OnTrack Tips to 30 minutes, and I think we've gone even a little bit over. But I want to address Dawn's question. If there's one piece of advice that you can give, what would you give me? Thank you, Dawn, for the question. The one piece of advice, if I were to tell the younger Jason before he went off and jumped off his cliff, I would say get your number one, first and foremost, separate you from your business. And you can do that for a very reasonable, for under $300. You can get an LLC, you can get a DBA, you can get a bank account, you can get a tax ID number, you can get all the very basic things that you need so that you can enter into business. And in going through that process, you're going to learn a whole lot about the other things that you're going to need as well, legalese and lawyers, and getting a little bit more fine-tuned and dialed in. Yes, those are going to cost more money. But the very basic, tell me if I'm wrong, Mike, Ralph, Carolyn, tell me if I'm wrong. For about $300, you can create a business that is separate from you, and that should be the number one thing that you do before you go into business. What do you guys think? And if you're going to tell me that I'm wrong, then you're not allowed to speak.
Yeah, no, that's right. You should do that. You know, one of the things that a lot of businesses do is that they leverage their own personal financial history to build a business. And then what ends up happening is your credit score suffers. It prevents you from being able to go out and, you know, worst case scenario, if you're running a business and it just tanks, you know, you shut the business down. You make it go out of business. But you can't go out of business. You know, when you get married and you want to buy a house and now you can't, you know, no bank will give you a mortgage because you've been leveraging your personal finances against your business. You know, what now? There's no coming back from that. So if the business is going to fail, you want the business to fail without inheriting that failure in your own personal life.
Absolutely, Mike.
Yeah, I would just say educate yourself. You know, if you're not at step one yet, you don't have a business, and you're thinking I'm going to go into business, educate yourself. I mean, the statistics are staggering with how many businesses fail. The reason these businesses fail for the most part is because at its core, people are not educated. That's why they make bad decisions. That's why they get in over their head with investing money wrong. That's why they don't get insurance and then get sued, and that's why things fall apart. So go educate yourself. Go to SCORE. I mean, go to the SBA, go to your local Chamber of Commerce and talk to some people who can guide you. Now, SCORE is a free thing. A lot of the folks in there are retired executives, and they may not necessarily be giving you the best entrepreneurial advice, but they will give you some things that you should educate yourself on. Like the first thing they do is give you a spreadsheet to build a business plan, and that starts to make you think about how to run your business. You know, go to the library or go to Amazon and get the E-Myth, get Dan Kennedy's Ultimate Sales Letter, get Guerrilla Marketing by J. Conrad Levinson. Educate yourself on marketing and how to run a business, and that is really time and effort, but I think it can really make a big impact on you. You won't have to rely on luck.
Yeah, absolutely, guys. I really appreciate, and gals, I really appreciate everybody jumping on here. It was totally spontaneous. I just had so much fun.
I didn't get to do my thing. I answered your question. I have a tip.
Well, I'll ask you for my tip when it's your turn, Ralph. Sit down and just chill out. Just raise your hand, okay? I'll get you. Calm down.
Take the Jason Weiser bot out.
All right, fine. Go ahead. Ask your. Let's hear it.
Well, I wanted to jump on what Mike said before, because another aspect of this, which is the actual execution of running a business, you have to have a process model. You have to have an understanding of, how you can workflow yourself, because most people that are starting businesses, they're typically doing other things, whether it's working another job or having a family, raising a family, coaching their kids' soccer game, whatever it is. You have to jump on what Mike said. Mike mentioned a couple of books. Another really good book is Getting Things Done from David Allen. The book is essentially about how to prioritize the things that you need to do, deprioritize the things that you don't need to do, and how to live a life that's balanced between being happy and joyful as opposed to just working all the time and being miserable.
Great book.
And sometimes when you're starting a business, sometimes you do have to dedicate a lot of time. If you're working all the time but you're joyful, that's not terrible if at the end of the road you can control your life and control your finances. But if you're running a business and you're miserable, to Jason's point, maybe it's not the thing for you.
Yeah, it's and I'm going to wrap things up here with saying that there's a big difference. Maybe this can be our next discussion, but there's a big difference between going ahead and trying to create a second revenue stream for yourself in terms of creating an hourly wage, a job. I can be a VA. And you need some assistance, I will type up letters for you. Now, that doesn't necessarily have to require this whole entrepreneur, create a business thing. That might just be a little side job, though we can have a little discussion on that. Of course, a lot of this depends on where you are. Are you really looking to create a business, quit your 9-to-5 job, jump in and commit to making this your sole breadwinning, way of paying your mortgages and sending your kids to college? Or is this a little way to, augment your current income? So I don't know. I just really enjoyed this conversation. We got to have this again. I enjoyed, again, go back to Web Search Social, listen to, start with episode 144, and then there are, 146 others that you can go and listen to. I don't know which number you guys are on, but I highly recommend Web Search Social. And, of course, I'm going to head on over to Nuclear Chowder Marketing. Yes?
Yes, sir.
Nuclear Chowder Marketing from Mike Brooks. Guys, gals, it's been wonderful. I'm going to say goodbye for now. And thank you for the return of the On Track Tips show. At least for one episode. I'm no promise, no boast, but it was fun to come out of hiding for a while. So, all right, well, take care. We'll talk to you later. Bye for now.